The moment Kendra Hayes' hand struck the young boy's cheek, the entire first-class cabin froze. Nobody moved. Not the other flight attendants, not the shocked passengers clutching their drinks, not even the air seemed to circulate. The boy's father, Malik Brooks, America's first black trillionaire, slowly lowered his phone, his eyes darkening with quiet rage. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered, his finger already dialing. Kendra smirked, not realizing her aviation career had just ended, along with something much greater than she could possibly imagine. How could one impulsive slap reveal a conspiracy that would shake America's corporate world to its core? Before we dive into this shocking story of discrimination and justice, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in standing up against injustice and exposing prejudice, smash that like button and subscribe for more eye-opening true stories that rarely make mainstream news. Malik Brooks adjusted his custom Italian suit as he guided his children, the young boy and his older sister, down the jet bridge towards Sky Blue Airlines' flagship aircraft. Despite owning a fleet of private jets, Malik occasionally flew commercial to stay connected with everyday experiences. His newest tech innovation had just pushed his net worth past the $1 trillion mark, making headlines as America's first black trillionaire. The boy bounced excitedly, clutching his favorite action figure, while his sister walked confidently beside her father, already showing the poise that would one day make her a formidable businesswoman in her own right. As they reached the aircraft door, flight attendant Kendra Hayes' welcoming smile instantly vanished when she saw them. Her eyes narrowed, scanning their designer clothes with unconcealed suspicion. "Economy boarding is from the rear entrance," she said sharply, not even bothering to look at their tickets. Malik calmly held up 3 first-class boarding passes. "We're in seats 2A through C." Kendra snatched the passes, examining them as if searching for forgeries. She reluctantly stepped aside with a tight-lipped, "Very well," muttering just loud enough to be heard. They'll let anyone up here with points these days. As the Brooks made their way to their seats, Malik noticed the stark contrast in treatment. A white family in expensive but less refined clothing was greeted warmly, offered pre-flight champagne, and had their bags expertly stowed by the same attendant who had barely acknowledged his family's existence. "Daddy, why was that lady mean?" the boy whispered, his innocent eyes confused. "Some people judge books by their covers, son." Malik answered quietly, helping his children settle in. He'd built his empire by noticing patterns others missed, and he immediately began mentally documenting each interaction, each subtle slight. This wasn't his first encounter with discrimination, despite his wealth. Money might have bought him access to exclusive spaces, but it couldn't buy respect from those who refused to see past his skin color. As other passengers boarded, Malik reflected on his journey from the struggling Brooklyn neighborhood where he grew up. His single mother had worked 3 jobs to keep him in a decent school, where his mathematical genius had eventually earned him scholarships. Even with degrees from MIT and Stanford, venture capitalists had initially refused to fund his startups until a blind submission process finally gave his innovations a chance. Each step had required 10 times the effort of his white counterparts. Kendra purposely avoided their section during pre-takeoff service. When she finally approached, she addressed the white businessman across the aisle first, then the elderly couple behind them, before reluctantly turning to the Brooks. "Anything to drink before takeoff?" she asked flatly. "Apple juice, please," the boy requested politely, using the manners his father had carefully instilled. Kendra's eyes rolled slightly. She turned to another flight attendant and said loudly, "These people always cause extra work. Watch them ask for the entire beverage cart." Malik maintained his dignity, his face impassive despite the burning indignation he felt. His daughter squeezed his hand, her young face showing she understood exactly what was happening. When Kendra returned, she carelessly thrust the drink toward the boy. The plastic cup tipped, spilling cold water across Malik's lap and onto his expensive suit. "Oh," Kendra said without a hint of apology. "Your son should be more careful when grabbing things." Malik calmly pressed the call button. A male flight attendant named Preston Caldwell arrived, his senior rank indicated by the additional stripes on his uniform. "Is there a problem?" Preston asked, his eyes darting between Kendra's smug expression and Malik's soaked pants. "Your colleague deliberately spilled water on me and then blamed my young son," Malik explained calmly. Preston's face hardened. "Sir, I'm sure it was an accident. These things happen during turbulence." "We're still at the gate," the daughter pointed out. Preston's eyes narrowed at the child who dared speak up. "I assure you none of our staff would intentionally do such a thing. Perhaps you're being a bit sensitive." The implication hung in the air. Malik recognized the unified front forming against his family. He'd seen it countless times in boardrooms and country clubs before his success had become too substantial to ignore. He pulled out his phone and began typing notes, including names. This subtle action caused both flight attendants to exchange nervous glances before they retreated to the galley. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Malik watched Kendra laugh with her colleagues while gesturing toward his family. He knew from decades of experience that this flight was going to be problematic, but he had no idea just how significantly it would change all their lives in the hours to come. As the plane climbed through turbulent air, the little boy whimpered softly, his small hands pressing against his ears. Malik knew his son's condition well. This wasn't a tantrum, but genuine pain from pressure changes affecting his sensitive eardrums. He fished in his bag for the special eardrops the pediatrician had prescribed, but before he could administer them, Kendra's sharp voice cut through the cabin. "That child needs to stop making a scene," she announced loudly. "This is first class, not a playground." Malik noticed a white family across the aisle whose toddler was crying much more loudly. Kendra was already there, cooing sympathetically and offering warm towels and candy to help with ear pressure. The contrast couldn't have been more stark or more public. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated differently based solely on their appearance? Comment number 1. If you've experienced discrimination firsthand or seen it happen to others, if you believe everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of their skin color or background, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more stories that expose injustice. The daughter, wise beyond her years, stood up and addressed Kendra politely. "Excuse me, ma'am. My brother has a medical condition. He's not being disruptive on purpose." Kendra's face contorted with anger at being challenged by a child, especially a black child, in what she clearly considered her domain. She placed her hand firmly on the girl's shoulder and pushed her roughly back into her seat. "Your kind need to learn your place," she hissed low enough that only the Brooks family could hear. "If you can't control your children, perhaps you shouldn't bring them into adult spaces." Malik felt his heart pound with controlled rage as he witnessed his daughter being manhandled. He discreetly positioned his phone to record the escalating situation while comforting both his children. Several passengers had noticed the commotion, but most studiously avoided eye contact. Their silence a familiar form of complicity he'd encountered throughout his life. However, one elderly white woman seated nearby, Evelyn Grant, a retired principal, cleared her throat loudly. "Young lady," Evelyn addressed Kendra, "I believe your behavior toward these children is completely inappropriate. I'd like to speak to your supervisor." Kendra's professional mask slipped entirely as she turned to Evelyn. "Ma'am, I'll be serving your section last now since you want to involve yourself in matters that don't concern you." The threat was clear, and it expanded the circle of Kendra's targeted mistreatment. Malik nodded appreciatively to Evelyn, who responded with a knowing look that communicated volumes about witnessing injustice and refusing to stay silent. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, the boy whispered urgently to his father that he needed to use the bathroom. Malik pressed the call button, but Kendra ignored it before stomping over. "Yes," she asked impatiently. "My son needs to use the restroom," Malik explained. Kendra gestured to the illuminated sign overhead. The seatbelt sign might come back on at any moment. He'll have to wait. A white boy approximately the boy's age stood up from his seat and headed toward the bathroom. Kendra smiled warmly at him as he passed. The boy's father hadn't even needed to ask permission. What would you do if you witnessed such blatant double standards happening right in front of you? Would you speak up like Evelyn, or remain silent like most of the other passengers? What do you think happens next in this escalating situation that would lead to an entire flight crew losing their jobs? Stay tuned as the tension builds to a shocking breaking point. Malik stood up, his imposing frame commanding attention without raising his voice. "My son will be using the restroom now, just like that child is. I'm also going to need your full name and employee ID number." Kendra's face flushed with anger. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm documenting a pattern of discriminatory behavior," Malik replied calmly. "There's a difference." As the boy made his way to the bathroom, Kendra pulled out her phone. "Keep this up, and I'll make sure security meets the plane. We don't tolerate disruptive passengers, regardless of who they think they are." The threat hung in the air as Malik guided the boy past her. He'd built an empire by recognizing when to fight and when to strategize. Right now, he was doing both, collecting evidence while protecting his children. Kendra had no idea she wasn't dealing with just any passenger, but with a man whose strategic brilliance had revolutionized 3 different industries and broken barriers previously thought impenetrable. What she also didn't know was just how catastrophically her next actions would change the trajectory of everyone on that flight. Into the transcontinental flight, the first-class cabin filled with the aroma of seared filet mignon and truffle risotto. As meal service began, passengers in the first few rows received their carefully plated lunches on fine china with proper silverware, a hallmark of Sky Blue's premium service. Kendra moved methodically through the cabin, serving everyone with practiced efficiency, until she reached the Brooks family's row. "We're out of the beef option," she announced flatly, despite Malik having clearly heard her confirm with the previous passenger that both options remained available. "The chicken is fine," Malik replied, maintaining his composure as he'd learned to do through decades of similar treatment. When the meals finally arrived after everyone else had been served, the boy's chicken was visibly cold. The sauce congealed unappetizingly on the plate. His daughter's vegetarian meal was missing several components that the identical meal across the aisle included. Malik's food appeared to have been deliberately messed with, though he couldn't prove it. The boy looked down at his plate, then at the dessert cart being brought around that contained chocolate cake slices. His disappointment was evident, but he'd been raised to speak up politely when something wasn't right. "Excuse me," the boy said in his small voice as Kendra passed with the dessert cart. "I think my dessert is missing." Kendra spun around, her face instantly hardening. "There's no dessert with the children's meal." "But everyone else got cake," the boy pointed out, gesturing to the other child passenger happily eating a large slice. "Are you calling me a liar?" Kendra's voice rose sharply. "Or are you just trying to get free food?" Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman across the aisle cleared his throat. The boy is right. All the meal services include dessert according to the menu. Stay out of this. Kendra snapped at him before turning back to the boy. This is exactly the kind of behavior I'd expect. The boy, fighting back tears at the public scolding, reached hesitantly toward his father's untouched cake, seeking comfort in the small pleasure. Kendra's hand shot out like a viper, slapping the boy's small fingers with enough force to leave an angry red mark across his knuckles. "Don't touch what isn't yours," she hissed. The cabin fell deadly silent. Several passengers gasped. The boy's eyes welled with tears of pain and humiliation, but he fought to maintain his composure as his father had taught him. Malik remained still, his face betraying nothing, while his mind calculated his next move with the precision that had made him a business legend. "You hurt me," the boy whispered, a single tear escaping despite his best efforts. Something in Kendra snapped at this simple statement of fact. Perhaps it was the calm dignity of a child she'd expected to crumble into a tantrum. Perhaps it was the increasingly disapproving looks from other passengers. Whatever the trigger, her hand lashed out again, this time striking the boy across his cheek with an audible crack that echoed through the silent cabin. "Don't you dare accuse me of anything, you spoiled brat!" she spat. Time seemed to stop. A woman gasped. Someone's drink tumbled to the floor. The boy sat frozen in shock, the red imprint of an adult hand blooming across his small face. Malik Brooks had faced discrimination, barriers, and outright hostility throughout his meteoric rise from Brooklyn housing projects to becoming America's first black trillionaire. He had always responded with strategic precision rather than reactive emotion. This disciplined approach had built his empire and broken countless barriers. But he had never before witnessed someone physically assault his child. With deliberate calm that belied the fury coursing through him, Malik pulled out his phone and pressed a number on speed dial. Kendra watched with a smug expression, clearly expecting him to call customer service, where his complaint would disappear into corporate oblivion. "Harlan." Malik spoke quietly into the phone, his eyes never leaving Kendra's face. "It's Malik. I'm on Sky Blue Flight 1857 from New York to Los Angeles. I need you to contact Chairman Rivera immediately. A flight attendant named Kendra Hayes just physically assaulted the boy twice. I have it on video." Kendra's smirk faltered slightly, but she maintained her confident stance. "Sir, you aren't allowed to make calls during flight," she said loudly for the benefit of nearby passengers. "And we don't appreciate passengers trying to name-drop or make threats." Malik simply held her gaze as he continued speaking into the phone. "Yes, I'll hold for the chairman." Then to Kendra, he added quietly, "You have no idea what you've just done." Kendra rolled her eyes, clearly believing Malik was bluffing. She had dealt with difficult passengers claiming connections before. She had no way of knowing that Malik Brooks owned a percentage of Sky Blue Airlines' parent company, or that Chairman Rivera had personally courted his investment during the airline's financial troubles. As Kendra strutted away, whispering to her colleagues and casting disdainful looks back at the Brooks family, Malik gently tended to his son's reddened face and hand. The quiet dignity with which this powerful man comforted his injured child stood in stark contrast to Kendra's uncontrolled rage. Several passengers were now openly recording the situation on their phones, their earlier reluctance to get involved evaporating after witnessing the unconscionable physical assault of a child. What none of them yet realized was that this moment would trigger a cascade of events that would expose not just one flight attendant's racism, but an entire corporate conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of America's business elite. Malik Brooks cradled his son close, whispering reassurances while pressing a cool napkin against the child's red mark. His daughter, displaying the protective instinct of an older sister, held her brother's hand and glared defiantly toward the galley where Kendra had retreated with her colleagues. The cabin remained unnaturally quiet, passengers processing the shocking scene they had just witnessed. A uniformed airline employee striking a young child. In the galley, Kendra showed no remorse as she huddled with lead flight attendant Preston Caldwell and 2 other crew members. Their conversation, though hushed, was clearly audible to several nearby passengers. "Can you believe the nerve?" Kendra scoffed, adjusting her uniform smugly, acting like he's somebody important, threatening to call the chairman. "Please." Preston shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the Brooks family. "Kendra, do you know who that is? Some rich guy who thinks the rules don't apply to his bratty kids." Kendra replied dismissively. "That's Malik Brooks," Preston whispered urgently. "The tech billionaire. Actually, I think he's worth even more now." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Kendra's face, quickly replaced by hardened resolve. "So what? These people always play the race card when they don't get special treatment. I've been flying first class for years. Nothing's going to happen." Back in his seat, Malik continued his phone conversation, his voice measured and calm despite the circumstances. The boy had stopped crying, but remained pressed against his father's side, the child's usual exuberance thoroughly crushed. Nearby, passengers alternated between pretending to mind their own business and casting sympathetic glances toward the family. Exactly after Malik's call, the plane's intercom crackled to life with the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Barrett speaking. I've just received instructions from our operations center to divert to Denver International Airport for an unscheduled landing due to an administrative matter. We should be on the ground soon. We apologize for any inconvenience." A confused murmur spread through the cabin. Kendra emerged from the galley, her face flushed, but her stance defiant as she approached the Brooks family once more. "I hope you're happy," she said, leaning down toward Malik, "inconveniencing everyone with your complaints." Malik regarded her calmly. "The only person responsible for this situation is you, Ms. Hayes." "Oh, please." Kendra sneered loud enough for surrounding passengers to hear. "You people always think you're being targeted. Maybe if you taught your children some manners, instead of playing the race card every time someone corrects their behavior, we wouldn't be in this situation." Several passengers inhaled sharply at the unmistakable racial comment. Evelyn, the elderly woman who had spoken up earlier, activated her call button immediately. Kendra ignored it, her attention fixed on Malik. "I know what you're doing," Kendra continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "Recording everything, trying to get a big settlement. Well, it won't work. I have rights too, and I'm documenting your disruptive behavior." Malik remained stone-faced, still on his phone call, though not speaking. Kendra misinterpreted his silence as submission, or perhaps fear of her threats. "Hand over your phone," she demanded suddenly. "Recording crew members is against airline policy and federal aviation regulations." "No, it isn't," came a voice from across the aisle, a middle-aged man who identified himself as an aviation attorney. "Passengers are permitted to record their own experiences on aircraft, including interactions with crew." Kendra's face contorted with rage at this contradiction. "I wasn't talking to you," she snapped before turning back to Malik. "The phone now." Malik finally lowered his phone slightly. "I'm currently speaking with Chairman Rivera of Sky Blue Airlines and Mr. Kingston, your CEO. They're both on the line and have been listening to this entire interaction. Would you like to speak with them?" Kendra laughed derisively. "Right. And I'm on the phone with the president. Your bluffs don't scare me." As if in response to her dismissal, Every one of the crew phones in the galley began ringing simultaneously. Preston reluctantly answered one, his face draining of color as he listened to the voice on the other end. He gestured frantically for Kendra to join him. "What?" she demanded as she approached. "It's the Chief Operating Officer," Preston whispered, his hand shaking as he held out the phone. "For you specifically." The smug expression finally faltered on Kendra's face, replaced momentarily by uncertainty, before hardening into defiance. She snatched the phone, listening for just a few seconds before responding loudly. "That's not what happened at all. They're lying. That child was being disruptive, and I simply—" She stopped, listening again, her knuckles whitening around the phone. "But you can't just— Don't I get a chance to— Hello? Hello?" The Denver skyline came into view as the aircraft began its descent. Kendra stormed back to the Brooks family, her professional demeanor completely abandoned. "You think you've won, but you have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed at Malik. "I have friends, powerful friends." Malik finally broke his calm silence. "Ms. Hayes, for your own sake, I suggest you stop talking immediately." As the plane touched down at Denver International, passengers were startled to see a veritable welcoming committee waiting on the tarmac through the aircraft windows. Not the usual ground crew, but what appeared to be airline executives in suits, accompanied by airport security officers. Kendra maintained her confidence right until the jet bridge connected and the aircraft door opened. When the lead person, a woman in an impeccable suit with a sky blue executive badge, stepped aboard, Kendra stepped forward with a victorious smile. "Thank goodness you're here. This passenger has been harassing me and making false accusations. I need him removed from the flight immediately." The executive didn't even glance at Malik. Instead, she addressed the pilot. "Captain Barrett, I'm Sophia Ramirez, Vice President of Flight Operations. I need your entire cabin crew to deplane immediately with your documentation." She pointed accusingly at the Brooks. She pointed accusingly at the Brooks family. "Ms. Hayes, along with the rest of this cabin crew, is being removed from duty, effective immediately pending investigation." Ramirez announced loud enough for all passengers to hear. "Airport security will escort you to the administrative offices." As security officers stepped forward, Kendra's professional facade completely crumbled. "This is ridiculous. They're lying. It's all because he's rich and black. This is reverse racism." Passengers watched in stunned silence as Kendra was escorted from the aircraft, still shouting accusations. Preston and the other crew members followed quietly, their faces ashen. Through the windows, first-class passengers could see a new crew approaching across the tarmac. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ramirez addressed the cabin. "On behalf of Sky Blue Airlines, I extend our sincerest apologies for this unfortunate incident and the delay in your journey. We will be providing compensation details before arrival." She then approached the Brooks family directly, kneeling to eye level with the boy. "Young man, on behalf of our entire company, I want to personally apologize for your experience today. What happened was unacceptable and does not reflect our values." As the replacement crew boarded, bringing fresh meals and premium amenities for all passengers, Malik Brooks watched the proceedings with measured satisfaction. This immediate response was appropriate, but he knew from experience that systemic problems rarely had simple solutions. What none of the relieved passengers realized was that this incident was far from over. In the terminal, as they refueled and prepared for continuation to Los Angeles, Kendra broke away from her security escort. She sprinted toward the windows overlooking the aircraft, her face contorted with rage. She pounded on the glass, pointing at Malik and shouting words that passengers couldn't hear but could easily read on her lips. racial slurs and threats that shocked even those who had witnessed her earlier behavior. Airport security quickly restrained her, but not before dozens of passengers had captured her tirade on their phones. As she was led away, Malik made eye contact with her through the window. In that moment, Kendra Hayes seemed to realize that her career had just ended. What she couldn't possibly know was that this was merely the first domino in a sequence that would ultimately expose corruption, reaching into the highest levels of corporate America. The replacement crew served the Brooks family with impeccable courtesy as the plane finally took off for Los Angeles. Yet, Malik's mind was already racing ahead, analyzing the incident not as an isolated case of discrimination, but as a data point in a larger pattern. His instincts, the same ones that had built his business empire, told him something more was happening beneath the surface. Kendra's parting threat about powerful friends hadn't been the desperate bluff of a terminated employee, but a warning he would soon discover was all too real. As sky blue racism had become the top trending topic across all social media platforms, video clips of Kendra Hayes slapping the boy had been viewed many times, with the subsequent airport tirade reaching similar numbers. Public opinion seemed overwhelmingly against the former flight attendant, with most commenters expressing shock that such blatant discrimination could occur. But by mid-afternoon, a counter-narrative began emerging. Kendra Hayes, freshly coiffed and dressed conservatively, appeared on national morning news, tears streaming down her face as she told a dramatically different version of events. "I have devoted my life to customer service," she sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "What they're not showing you is how disruptive that child was being, endangering other passengers by running in the aisles and throwing food." The interviewer, clearly sympathetic, nodded encouragingly. "And you're saying the father, Malik Brooks, used his wealth and influence to have you fired without due process?" "Exactly," Kendra nodded vigorously. "Years of perfect service records thrown away because someone powerful played the race card. What about my rights? What about the fact that I'm a single mother with a mortgage?" No mention was made of the multiple videos clearly showing the boy seated quietly when Kendra struck him, nor of her racist tirade at the airport. Instead, the segment featured carefully selected photos of Kendra volunteering at community events and a testimonial from a former colleague praising her professionalism. Within hours of the interview, a new hashtag began trending: "Stand with Kendra." The online conversation shifted dramatically, with thousands of accounts suddenly sharing near-identical messages about reverse racism and cancel culture gone too far. A fundraiser for Kendra's legal defense collected a large amount in its first day. At Sky Blue headquarters, CEO Walter Kingston stared grimly at the social media analytics on his screen. "This is coordinated," he told his crisis management team. "These aren't organic reactions." His phone rang with a number he recognized immediately. Malik Brooks. "I assume you're seeing what I'm seeing," Malik said without preamble when Kingston answered. "Yes, we're not backing down from our decision, Malik. The videos speak for themselves." "It's bigger than your airline now," Malik replied. "My security team has identified bot networks amplifying her message. Someone with significant resources is backing her." As Malik spoke, his personal assistant alerted him to breaking news. Washington Innovations had just lost a major government contract that had been all but finalized the previous week. The official reason cited administrative reconsideration, but the timing was suspicious to say the least. Meanwhile, the boy had returned to his exclusive private school, the Alpine Academy. Malik had notified the administration about the incident, expecting additional support for his traumatized son. Instead, the headmaster seemed strangely distant during their call, offering only perfunctory concern. Malik now understood why, when his daughter called him from her classroom, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Dad, you need to come to school right now. The parents are saying horrible things to the boy." Malik arrived to find his son sitting alone in the headmaster's office, tears streaming silently down his face. The headmaster, Dr. Harlan, looked uncomfortable, but not particularly sympathetic. "Mr. Brooks, there seems to be some disagreement among our parent community regarding the incident on your flight." "Disagreement?" Malik echoed incredulously. "My son was physically assaulted by an airline employee. There is video evidence." Dr. Harlan shifted in his chair. "Several of our most prominent families believe the media coverage has been unfair to Miss Hayes. They feel your family's influence has distorted the story. They're calling the boy a liar," his daughter interjected, "and saying Dad only got where he is by playing the race card." "Young lady, that's not exactly what—" Dr. Harlan began. "It's exactly what the Langford twins' mother said," the daughter countered. "Right in the hallway, loud enough for everyone to hear." Malik's calm exterior masked his growing realization that what he was facing extended far beyond one flight attendant's actions. The coordinated nature of the backlash, the sudden contract cancellation, and now the school administration's thinly veiled hostility all pointed to something more systematic. "Dr. Harlan," Malik said quietly, "are you suggesting my children are no longer welcome at Alpine Academy?" The headmaster's expression confirmed Malik's suspicion before he even spoke. "Mr. Brooks, perhaps it would be best for everyone if the boy and his sister took some time away from campus until this media attention dies down. In other words," Malik thought, "protect the wealthy white families from the uncomfortable reality of racism rather than protect the black children actually experiencing it." It was a familiar pattern, just in a new setting. As the Brooks left the school, reporters had somehow gathered at the gates. Malik ushered his children into their waiting car as shouted questions followed them. "Mr. Brooks, how do you respond to allegations that you fabricated the assault claims? Is it true you threatened to buy Sky Blue Airlines and fire everyone if Miss Hayes wasn't terminated? Did you offer Alpine Academy a donation to cover up your son's behavioral issues?" The questions were so specifically targeted, so precisely aligned with Kendra Hayes' narrative, that Malik knew they couldn't be coincidental. Someone was orchestrating a comprehensive campaign to discredit him and, by extension, legitimate claims of racial discrimination. Back at his office, Malik's suspicions were confirmed when his chief security officer showed him a disturbing pattern of activity. "These aren't just random supporters," she explained, pointing to a network diagram on her screen. "Kendra Hayes' social media campaign is being amplified by accounts connected to 3 major corporations that compete directly with your companies." One name in particular caught Malik's attention. Voss and Associates, the law firm representing Kendra Hayes, was simultaneously representing these corporations in various matters. The coincidence seemed too perfect to be random. "There's more," his security chief continued. "Harlan Voss has connections to several extremist groups classified as hate organizations. He's represented them pro bono in free speech cases. He's careful to maintain plausible deniability while signaling his sympathies." The most disturbing revelation came when Malik's team uncovered financial connections between Voss's firm and Pinnacle Technologies, Malik's chief corporate rival. Pinnacle CEO Vivian Langford had personally approved millions in legal fees to Voss, not for actual legal work, but for vaguely defined consulting services. "They're using Kendra Hayes," Malik concluded. "She's just a pawn in their game." "A willing pawn," the security chief noted. "The psychological profile suggests she genuinely believes she's the victim here. Her social media history shows a long pattern of racially charged comments and complaints about those people getting special treatment. As Malik absorbed this information, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Preston Caldwell, the lead flight attendant from the Sky Blue flight, had released a statement claiming the video of Kendra slapping the boy had been deceptively edited and that Malik Brooks had been the actual aggressor. The claim was absurd on its face. The unedited videos clearly showed the entire interaction. But Malik knew from experience that the truth alone wasn't always enough when facing a coordinated disinformation campaign backed by powerful interests. As he contemplated his next steps, Malik received another alert. 3 more major contracts with his companies had been mysteriously delayed or canceled. The message was becoming clear. This wasn't just about defending Kendra Hayes. It was about making an example of Malik Brooks, showing that even a trillionaire couldn't challenge certain power structures without consequences. These forces didn't understand that Malik hadn't built his empire by backing down from challenges. He had succeeded in business not despite the obstacles placed in his way because of his race, but because those obstacles had forced him to become more strategic, more thorough, and more resilient than his competitors. If someone wanted to use this incident to teach a lesson, they had chosen the wrong opponent. Malik calmly opened his laptop and began typing an email to his executive team. The subject line read, simply, "Comprehensive Response Strategy." The real battle was just beginning. The mahogany-paneled conference room of Voss and Associates exuded old money and entrenched power. Kendra Hayes sat nervously at the massive table, looking out of place despite her new designer outfit, purchased with proceeds from her rapidly growing legal defense fund. Harlan Voss adjusted his gold cufflinks as he addressed the assembled team of attorneys and PR specialists. The wrongful termination suit against Sky Blue is just the beginning, he announced. We're positioning Miss Hayes as the victim of woke culture and cancel society. A hard-working American woman sacrificed to appease a powerful black man throwing his weight around. Kendra nodded, increasingly comfortable with this narrative that absolved her of any responsibility. They didn't even give me a chance to tell my side, she added, repeating the talking point she'd been coached on. What she didn't notice was the meaningful glance exchanged between Voss and Vivian Langford, a sharply dressed woman whose family name adorned buildings throughout the city. The Langfords were major shareholders in Pinnacle Technologies, Malik Brooks's chief corporate rival. Our polling shows significant traction with the reverse racism angle, reported the PR director. We've got 3 senators already making statements about the dangerous precedent of allowing wealthy individuals to destroy working-class livelihoods over perceived slights. Kendra's lawsuit, filed that morning, made headlines across all major networks. The complaint painted her as a dedicated professional who had gently redirected an unruly child only to have her career destroyed by an overreaction driven by racial grievance politics. It demanded millions in damages for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. The dollar amount was deliberately provocative, designed to generate maximum outrage. It worked. By lunchtime, conservative commentators were devoting entire segments to the case, framing it as emblematic of everything wrong with modern America. This is what happens when we elevate people based on identity politics rather than merit, declared one popular pundit. A man becomes a trillionaire through diversity initiatives and government contracts, then uses that power to crush a working-class woman for doing her job. The narrative was as false as it was effective. Malik Brooks had built his fortune through revolutionary technology and business acumen without any government assistance. But the coordinated messaging campaign created an alternative reality that millions of viewers began accepting as truth. Malik watched these developments with analytical detachment from his home office, where he had gathered a response team of his own. "They're not just defending Kendra Hayes," he observed. "They're using this incident to attack the very concept of anti-racism." His general counsel nodded grimly. 6 more contracts canceled this morning, all with companies connected to the Langford family or their associates. This is coordinated economic pressure, and the school situation has escalated, added Malik's chief of staff. Alpine Academy's board voted to suspend the boy and his sister, pending an investigation into their behavior. 3 other families have withdrawn their children, claiming they don't feel safe. Malik absorbed this information with the same calm precision that had guided his rise from poverty to unprecedented wealth. Where others might have seen only attacks, he recognized a pattern revealing his opponent's strategy, and more importantly, their vulnerabilities. "They're trying to isolate us socially and economically," he concluded, "classic tactics against those who challenge entrenched power. But they've made 3 critical errors." He stood and approached the digital whiteboard where his team had mapped the connections between Kendra Hayes, Harlan Voss, the Langford family, and various media outlets amplifying their message. First, they assumed I would respond emotionally rather than strategically. Second, they underestimated how much evidence we already have. And third, he smiled slightly, they forgot to check what other companies I own. Malik gestured to his chief technology officer. "Activate protocol verification." The CTO nodded and began typing rapidly on his laptop. Within minutes, every major social media platform lit up with authenticated, time-stamped video from multiple angles of the entire flight incident, including footage that hadn't previously been public. The videos came with forensic certification of their authenticity, leaving no room for claims of deceptive editing. Simultaneously, Malik's media company released a special report documenting Kendra Hayes' history of customer complaints, disproportionately filed by passengers of color. Former Sky Blue employees, protected by anonymity, described a pattern of similar behavior that had been repeatedly overlooked by management. But Malik's most effective counter-move targeted the financial infrastructure supporting Kendra's campaign. His team had traced the primary funding sources behind her suddenly enormous legal defense fund to shell companies ultimately controlled by the Langford family and their associates. "Release the financial analysis," Malik instructed his communications director. Within hours, detailed reports appeared across financial news outlets. Flight attendants' grassroots support revealed as AstroTurf campaign, funded by tech rivals family. The articles meticulously documented how the same entities bankrolling Kendra Hayes' defense were simultaneously canceling contracts with Washington innovations companies. The coordinated nature of these revelations shifted the narrative dramatically. What had been portrayed as a simple employment dispute was now revealed as a sophisticated attempt by powerful interests to weaponize racism for corporate advantage. Kendra Hayes, watching her smartphone notifications explode with this new wave of coverage, turned pale. "They're saying I'm just a pawn," she told Voss during an emergency meeting, "that I'm being used by billionaires in some corporate war." Voss's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Stay on message," he instructed firmly. "You're the victim here, remember? Brooks is just trying to distract from his abuse of power." But the damage control was complicated. The next morning, when an anonymous source leaked emails between Voss and Vivian Langford discussing the need to make an example of Brooks and put him back in his place after he had forgotten who really runs things. The racial undertones were unmistakable, and the backlash was swift. 3 senators who had publicly supported Kendra quickly distanced themselves from the case. Her fundraising plateaued as donors questioned whether their contributions were actually supporting a corporate proxy war rather than a wronged employee. Malik's strategic response had successfully exposed the broader agenda behind Kendra's lawsuit, but his opponents were powerful, entrenched, and unaccustomed to losing. Their counterattack came from an unexpected direction. The boy, still traumatized by both the original incident and his treatment at school, had been seeing a therapist to process his experiences. After a particularly difficult session, Malik found his son in tears, clutching his tablet. "What's wrong, buddy?" Malik asked gently. "The kids at school," the boy sobbed. "They're saying I lied about everything, that I hit the lady first and she was just defending herself." Malik took the tablet and found dozens of cruel messages from the boy's classmates, clearly parroting language from their parents. The coordinated bullying campaign had moved beyond the adults to target a young child already suffering from trauma. For the first time since the incident began, Malik felt his carefully maintained composure crack. He had faced discrimination throughout his life and career, developing strategies to overcome barriers and succeed despite them. But seeing his children suffer for simply existing in their skin awakened something more primal than his strategic business mind. As he comforted his son, Malik's phone rang with news that would transform the conflict yet again. His chief security officer's voice was urgent. "Sir, we've traced the source of the emails attacking the boy. They're coming from inside Alpine Academy's administration building." The realization dawned that this wasn't just about Kendra Hayes or even corporate rivalry. The Langfords and their allies were willing to psychologically torture a child to maintain their position at the top of America's social and economic hierarchy. For people like them, a black trillionaire was an anomaly that threatened the system they had built and benefited from for generations. Malik had always operated within that system, finding ways to succeed despite its biases. Now, watching his traumatized child, he recognized the naivety of that belief. No amount of wealth or achievement could protect his family from the fundamental injustices embedded in American society. As he sat beside the boy's bed, gently holding his son's hand until the child finally fell into troubled sleep, Malik made a decision. This wasn't just about accountability for one person's reprehensible actions anymore. It was about exposing the entire network of power and privilege that had mobilized to protect her, not because they cared about Kendra Hayes, but because they feared the precedent of a black man successfully demanding justice. Malik Brooks's private phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Normally, he would let such calls go to screening, but something prompted him to answer directly. It was a decision that would change everything. "Mr. Brooks," the voice was elderly, female, and hesitant. "This is Evelyn Grant. I was on your flight with that horrible stewardess." Malik immediately recalled the kind older woman who had spoken up when no one else would. "Mrs. Grant, thank you for your support that day. It meant a lot to my family. I'm calling because I have something you need to hear." Evelyn continued. "I always record my flights. It's a habit from when my husband was alive. He was afraid of flying, so I'd record the normal sounds to show him how peaceful it actually was." Malik straightened, immediately grasping the significance. "You have audio of the incident. The entire flight, clear as day, including what that woman said when she thought no one could hear her." Evelyn's voice hardened. "The things she called you and your children when she was in the galley with the other attendants would make a sailor blush. And there's more. She was talking before takeoff about making sure those people had a difficult flight. This was potentially game-changing evidence. While video had captured the physical assault, comprehensive audio revealing premeditated intent to discriminate would destroy Kendra Hayes' claim that she had merely reacted to disruptive behavior. "Mrs. Grant, would you be willing to share this recording? That's why I'm calling. My grandson is bringing it over to your office tomorrow morning. I wanted to do the right thing." Malik thanked her profusely, a weight lifting from his shoulders. With this evidence, Kendra's lawsuit would collapse, and the conspiracy supporting her would lose its central figure. But someone else was apparently monitoring Malik's calls. At a.m., Evelyn Grant's home was broken into. Nothing of value was taken except her smartphone and laptop. The burglars were professional enough to leave no evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that could identify them. Malik learned of the break-in the next morning from Evelyn's distraught grandson, who called from the hospital. "They hurt her, Mr. Brooks. She tried to stop them from taking her phone, and they pushed her down the stairs. She's in critical condition." The attack on an elderly woman crossed a line Malik hadn't anticipated. He immediately dispatched his security team to the hospital and arranged for Evelyn to receive the best medical care possible. Her grandson, Jamal, arrived at Malik's office later that day, visibly shaken. "Grandma was so upset about what happened to your son," Jamal explained. "She kept saying nobody else on that plane had the courage to speak up." "Your grandmother is a hero," Malik said sincerely, "and I'm deeply sorry she's suffering for doing the right thing." Jamal shook his head grimly. "The recording is gone. They took every device she owned." But he hesitated, then continued with a slight smile. "Grandma's more tech-savvy than they realized. She had her cloud backup set to automatic. The recording should still be there." Jamal opened his laptop and attempted to access Evelyn's cloud account. His expression quickly changed from hope to concern. "That's strange. Her password isn't working." Malik's cybersecurity chief, called in to assist, confirmed the worst. "The account has been compromised. Someone with sophisticated tools has taken control and deleted the files." The targeted nature of the attack made it clear Evelyn's call to Malik had been monitored, which meant Malik's own communications were compromised at a level even his world-class security team hadn't detected. This wasn't the work of overzealous supporters or even a law firm. It required resources only available to the most powerful entities. Malik immediately implemented emergency security protocols, moving his children to a secure location and switching to communication methods even he had considered paranoid until now. As these measures were being implemented, his private investigator uncovered a disturbing connection. Kendra Hayes' brother, the investigator reported, is Arjun Patel, Senior Vice President at Langford Digital, the cyber warfare division of Pinnacle Technologies. Pinnacle was Malik's main competitor, but more significantly, it was controlled by the Langford family, the same family whose members had orchestrated the response at Alpine Academy and funded Kendra's legal defense. Arjun Patel's position explained how Kendra, a flight attendant of modest means, had suddenly gained access to nation-state-level hacking capabilities and media manipulation. As Malik processed this information, his security team made another discovery. Harlan Voss had represented multiple corporations against racial discrimination claims, but with a particular pattern. His firm had represented different companies in cases involving allegations of racism. The plaintiffs in those cases subsequently experienced mysterious personal and financial problems, job losses, tax audits, family crises, and in 3 cases, criminal charges later proven false. They don't just fight the legal battle, Malik realized. They destroy anyone who challenges them. Malik knew he needed to move quickly before this coalition of powerful interests could escalate further. He assigned his most trusted team members to contact other victims of Voss's tactics, building a comprehensive picture of the attorney's methodology. Meanwhile, Evelyn Grant's condition stabilized, though she remained unconscious. Malik arranged for round-the-clock security at her hospital room, concerned her attackers might return to ensure her silence. His caution proved justified when hospital security intercepted an individual with false medical credentials, attempting to access her floor. The would-be intruder escaped before police arrived. Malik was running out of options. The evidence that could exonerate his family and expose the conspiracy had been stolen, and his opponents seemed willing to go to extraordinary lengths to maintain their version of events. Even with his vast resources, Malik faced an organized network that controlled key institutions, from media outlets to regulatory agencies. As he contemplated his next steps, his daughter knocked on his office door. She already showed the incisive, analytical mind that would one day make her a formidable leader in her own right. "Dad," she said without preamble, "I think I know who might have evidence about what really happened." Malik raised an eyebrow, inviting her to continue. "The boy's watch," she explained. "The one Grandma gave him for his birthday. It has that emergency recording feature that activates when heart rate spikes. The boy was wearing it on the plane." Malik felt a glimmer of hope. The child's smartwatch had been designed with safety features to activate during emergencies, capturing audio and location data. If it had triggered during Kendra's assault, it might have recorded crucial evidence. They found the boy in the secure residence's game room, still subdued, but showing small signs of recovery. When asked about his watch, he nodded. "It buzzed when the mean lady hit me. I saw the red light." Malik gently retrieved the watch, which his security team confirmed had not been connected to compromised networks. The recording was still intact, capturing not just the slap, but the crucial moments before it, when Kendra could clearly be heard making racially charged comments and discussing with another crew member how they would make sure these people know their place. It wasn't as comprehensive as Evelyn's recording, but it was damning nonetheless. And more importantly, it was secure. Malik immediately transferred the data to protected servers and prepared to counterattack. What he didn't realize was that this evidence was just the tip of a much larger iceberg that would soon be revealed. Malik Brooks straightened his tie as he prepared to face the Washington Innovations Board of Directors. Despite founding the company and maintaining majority ownership, he knew several board members had been pressured to support a motion forcing him to step back from day-to-day operations until the personal matter with Kendra Hayes was resolved. The boardroom was tense as Malik entered, members avoiding his gaze. Corporate attorney Brooke Landon opened the proceedings with practiced neutrality. "We're here to discuss concerns about recent events affecting company valuation and reputation. Several members have proposed a temporary leadership transition to address these challenges." Malik noted which board members wouldn't meet his eyes, mentally cataloging the ones who'd clearly been compromised. He was about to respond when his phone vibrated with an urgent message from his daughter. "Stall the meeting. Evelyn Grant's trying to reach you. Says it's life or death." "Before we proceed," Malik said smoothly, "I'd like to request a recess to review some relevant documents that just arrived." The board chair reluctantly agreed. Malik stepped out immediately, calling the number his daughter had forwarded. Evelyn Grant's granddaughter answered on the first ring, her voice breathless with urgency. "Mr. Brooks, Grandma had a backup. She always kept copies of important things in multiple places. There's another recording in her safety deposit box. I have access, but I need help getting it. Someone's following me." Malik dispatched his security team to escort the granddaughter safely to the bank. As they waited for confirmation, he reflected on how quickly this had escalated from a single incident of discrimination to what increasingly appeared to be a vast conspiracy involving corporate rivals, media manipulation, and potentially criminal actions. His security chief called back later. "Sir, we secured the drive. Ms. Grant is safe. The recording is intact, but there's something you need to know. It contains much more than just the flight incident." "What do you mean?" Evelyn Grant didn't just record the flight, she accidentally left her recorder running during the Denver stopover. It captured a conversation between Kendra Hayes and Preston Caldwell in the terminal, discussing instructions they'd received before the flight. The implications were staggering. If true, this would prove the discrimination wasn't spontaneous, but premeditated, potentially orchestrated by the same interests now attacking Malik's business. "Get it authenticated immediately," Malik instructed. "Then prepare it for presentation." As Malik returned to the boardroom, he found the atmosphere had subtly shifted. Board member Sterling Voss, previously one of his strongest supporters, was now sitting beside the chairman, engaged in what appeared to be a persuasive conversation. When Malik entered, Voss glanced up with an expression that could only be described as regretful determination. The meeting resumed with Chairman Kingston addressing Malik directly. "While we respect your contributions to this company, the board feels the current situation requires undivided leadership. Mr. Voss has proposed a temporary transfer of operational control to the executive committee until personal matters are resolved." Malik noted that Voss couldn't meet his gaze. The man he'd known for years, who had been with the company since its earliest days, was now leading the effort to remove him. This wasn't just business. It was personal betrayal. "Before we vote," Malik said calmly, "I'd like to present new evidence directly relevant to these concerns." He connected his phone to the room's display system, prepared to play the critical portions of Evelyn's recording, only to find the connection failing repeatedly. The chairman smiled thinly. Perhaps technological issues are another sign that new leadership is needed. Malik recognized the sabotage for what it was. They had anticipated his move and taken countermeasures. As the board prepared to vote, the doors to the boardroom burst open. The boy walked in, escorted by Malik's chief of staff. "Boy, this isn't appropriate," Malik began, concerned for his son's well-being. But the young boy walked directly to his father with surprising determination. "Dad, I recorded it too," he said, holding up his smartwatch, "not just on the plane. Yesterday too, when Mr. Voss was talking to the scary lawyer man about making you leave your company." The boardroom fell silent. Voss's face drained of color. "That's ridiculous," he sputtered. The boy is obviously confused. The boy, finding courage despite his recent trauma, connected his watch to the display system himself, navigating the interface with the ease of a child raised in the digital age. Unlike Malik's compromised devices, the watch connected instantly. The recording was crystal clear. Sterling Voss's voice was unmistakable as he spoke with Harlan Voss. "Brooks is too powerful. He's forgotten his place. The board vote is arranged. He'll be out by noon tomorrow." Harlan's response was even more damning. "Good. Once he's isolated, we move to phase 2. The Langfords are prepared to acquire controlling interest at the depressed valuation. The consortium agrees this is necessary. Kendra Hayes was just the beginning. We need to make an example of him, but it was the next section that transformed the case from corporate intrigue to explicit conspiracy. The black billionaire problem," Voss said, "is that they don't understand the natural order. Brooks needs to learn there are consequences for challenging the system that made America great." As the recording continued, revealing names, dates, and explicit references to using Kendra Hayes as a pawn in a larger strategy to put Brooks back in his place, board members exchanged shocked glances. Several physically distanced themselves from Voss, who had collapsed into his chair, all pretense abandoned. Malik looked at his son with a mixture of pride and concern. "Boy, when did you record this?" "When you took me to your office yesterday," the boy explained. "Mr. Voss didn't see me in the little room next to your conference room. My watch started recording when he said mean things about us." The child's innocent action, capturing what sophisticated security systems had missed, had exposed the entire conspiracy. The board meeting quickly transformed from an attempt to remove Malik to an emergency session addressing Voss's breach of fiduciary duty. As security escorted the disgraced board member from the building, Malik's phone lit up with an urgent alert. Kendra Hayes was attempting to flee the country on a private jet registered to Langford Holdings. Simultaneously, unusual account activity suggested the conspirators were implementing some kind of scorched earth contingency plan. Massive data transfers and deletion attempts across systems connected to both Washington Innovations and the Langford corporate network. "They're trying to destroy the evidence," Malik's cybersecurity chief reported. "This is a sophisticated attack attempting to corrupt all our systems simultaneously." Malik smiled for the first time in days. "Let them try. We've been running Shadow Protocol since Evelyn's home was invaded." Shadow Protocol was Malik's proprietary contingency system, developed after previous corporate espionage attempts. It created secure, isolated backups of all critical data on servers physically disconnected from any network. A digital fortress impervious to even the most sophisticated cyber attacks. "All systems preserved, sir," came the confirmation minutes later. "And we've captured the attack signatures. They're distinctive." Forensics indicates government-grade tools being deployed for private purposes. "Forward everything to the FBI's Cybercrime Division," Malik instructed. "Full cooperation, no redactions." As he returned to the courtroom, Malik found proceedings had taken a dramatic turn. Preston Caldwell, the lead flight attendant who had enabled Kendra's behavior, had arrived with his own attorneys, requesting to provide immediate testimony in exchange for consideration during sentencing. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Rosario addressed him sternly, "you understand you're waiving certain rights by coming forward like this?" "I do, Your Honor," Caldwell replied, visibly nervous. "But I can't be part of this anymore. I was supposed to meet Mr. Brooks to tell him everything, but they got to me first. They threatened my family." Caldwell's testimony proved explosive, detailing not just the events of the flight, but the preparation beforehand. He described a call he'd received from Kendra the night before, explaining that she had special instructions regarding the Brooks family. "She told me they needed to be put in their place." Caldwell testified that people like Malik Brooks forget they're still just— I won't repeat the words she used. "She said we'd be protected. That powerful people would make sure nothing happened to us, no matter what we did." "And you agreed to this?" the prosecutor asked. "I didn't agree to hitting a child," Caldwell clarified. "But yes, I agreed to make their flight difficult. It was wrong. I've always prided myself on professionalism, but the truth is I resented Brooks's success." Kendra played into that resentment. She knew exactly what buttons to push. As Caldwell detailed the extent of his involvement and what he knew about the broader conspiracy, Malik received another update. His security team had intercepted communications suggesting Kendra's backers were implementing some kind of final solution to eliminate all evidence. The nature of this solution became clear when federal agents, acting on Malik's information, discovered explosives in the server facility housing backup evidence. The attempted sabotage confirmed what Malik had suspected. This was never just about one incident of discrimination or even corporate rivalry. It was about maintaining a system of power that viewed certain people's success as a fundamental threat to the established order. As the hearings concluded, the conspiracy was collapsing from within. Kendra Hayes, abandoned by her powerful sponsors and facing both civil and criminal charges, made a final desperate offer to tell everything. Malik, consulting with prosecutors, maintained his position. No deals for the woman who had struck his child. The Langford family, seeing their carefully constructed defenses crumbling, attempted to flee the country on their private jet, only to find federal agents waiting at the airport. The scene of America's wealthiest family being escorted into federal vehicles became an indelible image in the unfolding drama that evening. As Malik checked on his children, he found the boy sleeping peacefully for the first time since the incident. The boy was resilient, beginning to recover now that the threats were receding. His daughter sat nearby, reading legal briefs about the case with the intensity that reminded Malik so much of himself. "Is it over, Dad?" the boy asked, looking up from his game. Malik considered the question carefully. The immediate danger had passed. The conspiracy was exposed, its key members facing both civil and criminal charges. But the underlying issues, the entrenched power structures that viewed black success as a threat to be neutralized, those remained. "The worst is over," Malik answered truthfully. "But the real work is just beginning." He thought about how a simple act of standing up against discrimination had revealed a vast network of corruption and racial animus reaching into the highest levels of American business and politics. It wasn't just about one flight attendant. It was about a system that reflexively mobilized to protect white privilege whenever it was challenged. Malik's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. A newly hired sky blue flight attendant had just prevented a similar incident on a flight from Chicago, intervening when another crew member showed discriminatory behavior toward a young passenger of color. The new systems were working. As Malik prepared to leave for the day, the boy burst into his office, excited about his upcoming school presentation. The boy was attending a new school now, one that had embraced the Brooks family and used the case as an opportunity to educate students about bias and moral courage. "Dad, I finished my project," the boy announced proudly. "It's about Grandma Grant and how one person can change everything." Malik smiled, recognizing a profound truth in his son's simple characterization. Evelyn Grant had indeed changed everything, not through wealth or power, but through the simple act of bearing witness and refusing to stay silent. As father and son walked through the office together, Malik glanced at a monitor showing a new Sky Blue Airlines advertisement, a diverse group of flight attendants welcoming passengers of all backgrounds with the tagline, "Everyone belongs in the sky." It was a small symbol of the changes rippling outward from that single moment of confrontation in the sky. Malik knew the work of transformation was far from complete. The systems that had enabled Kendra Hayes and protected her powerful backers remained embedded in American institutions. Changing them would require sustained effort across generations. But as he watched his children growing into their own sense of purpose and witness, he felt something he had rarely permitted himself during his rise to unprecedented success: genuine hope. The Brooks family entered their waiting car, heading home through a world that, while still deeply flawed, had been nudged toward accountability by their refusal to accept injustice. In the distance, a sky blue airliner climbed into the evening sky, carrying with it not just passengers, but the possibility of a more just future-taking flight. The federal courthouse buzzed with unprecedented security as black SUVs delivered key figures in what the media now called the Hayes conspiracy. Kendra Hayes, once the central figure, had been reduced to a minor player as the investigation revealed the vast network that had used her as its public face. She hurried up the courthouse steps, flanked by new attorneys, her original counsel having abandoned her after their own complicity was exposed. Gone was the designer wardrobe and polished appearance from her media appearances, replaced by a simple suit that reflected her diminished circumstances. "Ms. Hayes, do you regret striking the boy?" shouted a reporter. Kendra ignored the question, but her expression revealed the dawning realization of her position. The powerful interests that had promised to protect her were now scrambling to save themselves, leaving her exposed to the full consequences of her actions. Inside, Malik Brooks conferred quietly with federal prosecutors, reviewing evidence from the comprehensive investigation his team had enabled. What had begun as a simple case of a flight attendant's discriminatory behavior had revealed a complex web of corporate corruption, targeted harassment, and conspiracy reaching into multiple industries. The Langford family has requested a private meeting, one prosecutor informed Malik. They're offering to settle all claims and provide compensatory damages if you'll agree to sealed records. Malik shook his head. No private settlements, no sealed records. The public deserves to know exactly how these systems operate. His refusal to accept confidential settlements had become a cornerstone of his strategy, not out of vindictiveness, but because meaningful change required transparency. Each attempt to buy silence only strengthened his resolve. As proceedings began, Kendra Hayes' new legal team attempted a desperate maneuver, offering her full testimony against the true masterminds in exchange for immunity. Judge Rosario, reviewing the extensive evidence already in hand, denied the request. "Ms. Hayes," the judge stated firmly, "your willing participation in discrimination and physical assault of a minor, followed by your prominent role in the subsequent defamation campaign, disqualifies you from consideration for immunity. The court acknowledges you were not the architect of the larger conspiracy, but you were an enthusiastic participant, not a victim." Kendra slumped in her chair as the reality of her situation finally sank in. The months of testimony had stripped away her rationalizations, leaving her face to face with the reality of her actions. "I hereby sentence you to years in federal prison, followed by years of supervised release and hours of community service, specifically working with organizations promoting racial justice and children's welfare." As Kendra was led away, Malik felt no satisfaction, only a sense that accountability, while necessary, was merely the beginning of a much longer journey. His focus had already shifted to the structural changes needed to prevent similar abuses of power. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as Malik emerged with his family and legal team. Rather than the standard celebratory press conference expected after such a victory, Malik had prepared something different. "Today isn't about punishment," he began, capturing every word. "It's about transformation. What happened to my family revealed something broken in our systems, not just one flight attendant's bias, but how power mobilizes to protect privilege when challenged." Malik unveiled the initiative he had been developing during the months of legal proceedings, the Brooks Accountability Project, a billion-dollar commitment to combating systemic discrimination across American institutions. "We will fund legal support for victims of discrimination who lack resources to seek justice," he explained. "We will investigate corporate cultures that enable bias, and we will develop new technologies to document and address disparities in treatment across race, gender, and other dimensions." As Malik outlined the comprehensive approach, industry analysts were already calculating its potential impact. With his resources and strategic vision now focused on institutional reform, traditional centers of power that had long operated with impunity faced unprecedented scrutiny. Later, Malik Brooks walked into the executive offices of Sky Blue Airlines. The company had been devastated by the scandal, its stock price plummeting as the extent of institutional discrimination within its ranks was exposed. CEO Walter Kingston had resigned along with most of the board of directors. Mr. Brooks, the receptionist, greeted him with visible nervousness. "The interim management team is waiting for you." The tension in the boardroom was palpable as Malik entered. The executives had been summoned without explanation, many assuming this was a prelude to devastating litigation that would finish the already struggling airline. "Ladies and gentlemen," Malik began, "you're wondering why I've asked to meet with you today." He placed a document on the table. "This is confirmation of my investment firm's acquisition of controlling interest in Sky Blue Airlines, completed this morning." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Malik raised a hand for silence. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because this company now has an opportunity to become a model for transformation. Sky Blue will implement the most comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols in the airline industry, not because of litigation or regulation, but because it makes business sense to treat all customers with dignity." Over the following months, Sky Blue underwent a remarkable transformation. Malik appointed a diverse leadership team tasked with rebuilding the company's culture from the ground up. New training programs, accountability systems, and transparent reporting mechanisms were implemented across all levels of the organization. Most significantly, Malik worked with his son to develop an innovation that would ultimately transform the industry. The Young Traveler's Voice System, allowing children to easily and securely report mistreatment during flights. The program, initially launched on Sky Blue, was eventually adopted by airlines worldwide after proving both effective and economically beneficial in reducing incidents and increasing customer loyalty. The boy had recovered from his trauma with the resilience of childhood, though the experience had left him more thoughtful, more aware of injustice around him. At the launch event for Young Traveler's Voice, he spoke briefly but powerfully about the importance of listening to children's experiences. "Sometimes grown-ups don't believe kids when we tell them something bad happened," he said simply. "This helps make sure we're heard." His daughter, meanwhile, had taken her initial analysis of power structures and expanded it into a comprehensive research project, working with sociologists from top universities to map how discrimination complaints were traditionally handled across different industries. She was already showing the analytical brilliance and moral clarity that suggested she might one day eclipse even her father's accomplishments. As for Evelyn Grant, she had become something of a celebrity, her straightforward moral courage resonating across generational and political lines. She used her platform to speak about the responsibility of bystanders, often telling audiences, "You don't have to be powerful to stand up for what's right. You just have to be present and willing." After Kendra Hayes' hand struck the boy's face, Malik stood at the window of his office, watching the transformation he had set in motion continue to unfold. Sky Blue Airlines, once a symbol of institutional discrimination, was now leading the industry in equity initiatives. The Brooks Accountability Project had already taken on cases that promised to transform practices in healthcare, education, and housing. The conspiracy that had mobilized against his family had been powerful, but it had ultimately failed because it underestimated both Malik's strategic brilliance and the power of simple moral clarity. Kendra Hayes and her powerful backers had assumed their positions of privilege were unassailable, that the system would automatically protect them even when they were clearly wrong. Malik's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. A newly hired Sky Blue flight attendant had just prevented a similar incident on a flight from Chicago, intervening when another crew member showed discriminatory behavior toward a young passenger of color. The new systems were working. As Malik prepared to leave for the day, the boy burst into his office, excited about his upcoming school presentation. The boy was attending a new school now, one that had embraced the Brooks family and used the case as an opportunity to educate students about bias and moral courage. "Dad, I finished my project," the boy announced proudly. "It's about Grandma Grant and how one person can change everything." Malik smiled, recognizing a profound truth in his son's simple characterization. Evelyn Grant had indeed changed everything, not through wealth or power, but through the simple act of bearing witness and refusing to stay silent. As father and son walked through the office together, Malik glanced at a monitor showing a new Sky Blue Airlines advertisement. a diverse group of flight attendants welcoming passengers of all backgrounds with the tagline, "Everyone belongs in the sky." It was a small symbol of the changes rippling outward from that single moment of confrontation at high altitude. Malik knew the work of transformation was far from complete. The systems that had enabled Kendra Hayes and protected her powerful backers remained embedded in American institutions. Changing them would require sustained effort across generations. But as he watched his children growing into their own sense of purpose and witness, he felt something he had rarely permitted himself during his rise to unprecedented success: genuine hope. The Brooks family entered their waiting car, heading home through a world that, while still deeply flawed, had been nudged toward accountability by their refusal to accept injustice. In the distance, a sky-blue airliner climbed into the evening sky, carrying with it not just passengers, but the possibility of a more just future taking flight. The story of Malik Brooks and his family teaches us powerful lessons about courage, accountability, and systemic change. When faced with blatant discrimination, Malik didn't just seek personal justice. He recognized the deeper patterns of institutional protection that enable such behavior to persist. His strategic response transformed an individual incident into a catalyst for widespread reform. We learned that true power lies not just in wealth or position, but in moral clarity and strategic action. Evelyn Grant, an elderly woman with no special resources, changed everything through her simple commitment to doing what was right. Her courage reminds us that witnesses to injustice have a crucial role to play. Silence perpetuates discrimination, while speaking up can spark transformation. The story also reveals how systems of privilege mobilize to protect themselves when challenged. The coordinated campaign against Malik exposed how deeply entrenched discriminatory attitudes remain, even in our supposedly progressive society. Those who benefit from existing power structures will often go to extraordinary lengths to maintain them. Perhaps most importantly, this story teaches us that meaningful change requires both accountability for individual actions and transformation of underlying systems. Kendra Hayes needed to face consequences for her behavior, but true justice demanded addressing the institutional cultures that enabled and protected her. Finally, we see that children like the boy and his sister understand more than we often credit. By involving them in creating solutions, Malik ensured the next generation would be better equipped to recognize and dismantle discriminatory systems. Real change isn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It's about creating new structures that make such behavior unacceptable in the first place. What would you have done if you witnessed what Evelyn Grant saw on that flight? Would you have spoken up or remained silent like most passengers? Comment below with courage if you believe in standing up against injustice, even when it's difficult. Has discrimination touched your life or someone you know? Share your experiences and how you responded. Your story might give others the strength they need to speak up next time. If you believe in creating a world where everyone is treated with dignity, regardless of their race or background, hit that subscribe button and join our community dedicated to sharing real stories that challenge us to be better. Like this video to help spread this important message to others who need to hear it. Thank you for listening to this story of courage, accountability, and transformation. May we all find the strength to stand up for what's right, even when powerful forces push back. Remember, as Malik Brooks learned, real change begins with refusing to accept injustice, no matter how normalized it might be.